Just picture it for a second. The giant, soaring columns of Luxor Temple, absolutely baked by 2,000 years of Egyptian sun. I mean, these ancient stones have seen it all. Empires rising, empires falling. But then, in 2004, deep inside one of those walls, someone found something. And no, it wasn't gold, it was something way more personal. A secret that connects us, right now, to the lives of people from 2 millennia ago. So let's really get into this. We are not talking about some pharaoh's forgotten treasure or a hidden royal tomb. Nope. We're talking about something you've got in your own closet. And that poses a really fascinating question, right? What on earth can a simple, worn-out shoe actually tell us about the ancient world? All right, so our story kicks off in a place that was literally built for gods and kings. I mean, this is one of the most magnificent temple complexes ever put together. It was a sacred, holy space, not exactly the kind of place you'd expect to find someone's lost property. An Italian archaeological team was doing their thing, working carefully at Luxor, when they looked into a sealed jar that had been stashed away in this little cavity between two mud brick walls. And you have to understand, this wasn't an accident. This was a deliberate hiding spot, and it had been left untouched for centuries. Now, when you hear archaeological find in Egypt, your mind just automatically goes to glittering treasure, doesn't it? You're thinking golden masks, priceless jewels. But what was inside this jar? It defied every single one of those expectations. It was something far more ordinary. And because of that, it was so much more mysterious. Inside that jar, packed away carefully, were 7 pairs of leather shoes. And get this, these weren't some pristine, ceremonial shoes made for a burial. No way. These were used. They were worn. Some of them were even patched up and repaired. These were the actual cherished belongings of real people, hidden away on purpose 2,000 years ago. So what exactly did they find in this strange little time capsule? Let's take a closer look at the actual evidence, because it's the tiny details here that make this discovery so unbelievably cool. You know, what's so incredible about this isn't just the objects, it's the human story they tell. The mix of sizes, including 2 pairs that belong to little kids, it just paints this vivid picture of a family. And because of that super dry Egyptian climate, the leather is so well preserved. We can actually see the creases from walking, the scuffs from daily life, even the careful little repairs. These weren't just things, they were part of someone's journey. This quote just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? I mean, in our world of fast fashion and disposable everything, it is so hard to imagine treating a pair of old shoes like their treasure. But 2,000 years ago, a good pair of shoes was a valuable, skillfully made possession. It was something you really took care of, something you protected. And this, of course, brings us to the real puzzle. Why would anyone go to all the trouble of hiding their worn-out shoes inside the wall of a holy temple? This wasn't a thief stashing his loot. It wasn't a forgotten locker. So what was really going on here? Well, to answer that, we have to zoom out. I mean, way, way out from Egypt. Because as it turns out, this discovery in Luxor is not some isolated one-off thing. It's actually one tiny piece of a bizarre, ancient, and global tradition. You see, for centuries, all over the world, people have been deliberately hiding shoes inside buildings. I'm talking old farmhouses in Europe, colonial homes in America, everywhere. People keep finding these worn-out shoes tucked away in walls and up chimneys. It's a practice that scholars actually have a name for: concealed shoes. The leading theory is that this was a form of protective magic, specifically something called apotropaic magic. Now, that's a fancy term, but the idea is actually really simple: using an everyday object like a charm to ward off evil and bad luck. And this just brilliantly illustrates how it worked. The shoes are almost always found at the weak points of a building. You know, the chimney, the windows, the doors, all the places a ghost or an evil spirit might try to sneak in. It's kind of like setting up a magical security system for your house. And just to give you a sense of how common this was, the Northampton Museum in England keeps a running list of all these finds. By 2012, they had logged over 1,900 separate reports. So this was no quirky little local custom. It was a widespread belief that stretched across the globe. This comparison is really what's so mind-blowing. We are seeing evidence of the exact same kind of ritual in Egypt 2,000 years ago and in a 200-year-old house in New England. I mean, that is an unbelievably persistent tradition, crossing countless cultures and thousands of years. So how is this whole thing supposed to work?
Well, the belief was that a shoe, because it's shaped like a foot and just saturated with the owner's scent, would act as the perfect bait. An evil spirit would be lured into the shoe, but once it was inside, the shape of the shoe would trap it. It couldn't back out. It's basically a spirit trap. Pretty clever, right? Okay, so now let's bring it all the way back to Luxor. Because to really get why these shoes were valuable enough to be used in a protective ritual, we need to understand what footwear actually meant back in ancient Egypt.
You see, shoes were way more than just something to protect your feet. They were a social signal. On one hand, you had simple, practical sandals woven from stuff like papyrus for everyday people. And on the other, you had these durable, expensive leather sandals for anyone who could afford them. What you had on your feet said a whole lot about who you were.
Now take a look at these. This is where footwear becomes a true status symbol. The intricate, colorful decoration here tells you that these were luxury items. They were worn by the elite. They weren't just about function. They were a public statement about your wealth and your power.
And the craftsmanship was just remarkable, across the board. Making any pair of shoes, whether it was from leather, wood, or weeds, it took immense skill and time. They were valuable items, not something you just casually tossed out. You can see the artistry right here, even in what looks like a simple wooden pair. So, after unraveling this global mystery and diving into ancient fashion, what's the big takeaway? What does a 2,000-year-old shoe really mean for us, right here, right now? What it means is that these shoes are a direct, physical link to the inner lives of ancient people. These weren't made for a king's tomb. They were worn by an ordinary family. And by hiding them, they were hiding a piece of themselves, using a deeply held belief to try and protect the people they loved. I absolutely love this quote from the history blog because it's just the perfect modern analogy. For the people who owned them, these weren't just old shoes. They were prized possessions. They represented a huge investment of money and time, and they held deep personal value, a lot like a pair of designer heels might today. And that really leaves us with a fascinating thought to chew on. 2,000 years from now, when archaeologists are sifting through the layers of our world, what seemingly ordinary objects are they going to find? What will our worn-out sneakers, or our old smartphones, or our favorite coffee mugs say about our own hopes, our fears, and what we believed in?